really cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's just
please take it
cute
away.
and small. So.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be with you guys here.
Happy to be here.
At COP26 at the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. And Alan Organschi, architect and leader in timber buildings, in sustainable building, in low carbon building, and recently co-creator of the Bauhaus Earth. And Matt Stevenson, founder of Ecosystems Tech, and creator of an amazing array of prototypes that are delivering on the ambitions of low carbon building here, and we're in one of them right now. And it's just great to be with you guys. And I want to talk to both of you about just where you're at with the work that you're doing. What is Bauhaus Earth? Where is it at? What are its promises and challenges? And how Matt, you're working on, you're actually building these pieces that are part of these larger strategies. So I don't know, I kind of like to start with, I'm Scott Francisco. I'm one of the founders of Cities4Forests and Wood at Work. And our objective is to bring cities and city councils into this conversation, get them thinking more about forests as part of their nature-based solutions. And that can be anything from where they're sourcing wood to action on faraway forests. Like, for example, the coffees that we're drinking are coming from forest conservation communities in different parts of the tropics. So I think it's really all about integration and how the systems are working together, how we're transforming the systems, macro scale, micro scale. But Alan, what's tell me about Bauhaus Earth. And
Bauhaus Earth is a consortium of architects, artists, natural scientists, climate physicists, social scientists who are essentially working to understand the entire systemic relationship between the resource, biological sources like forests, and this more sort of technical economy that will solve the building boom of the next 30 years, 2.3 billion urban dwellers.
Wow.
And I'm extremely excited to be in this incredible example of ingenuity about regional resource pools and how we can take best advantage, not only to make low carbon emitting buildings, but actually buildings that store carbon and that amass carbon in the technosphere, the place where all human activity takes place, in a really synergistic way between these sort of forest metabolisms and human metabolisms. So this is a dream to sit here and see that locally sourced, regionally sourced materials can be used in so many different ways to create such incredibly convivial housing. And if you haven't come here and seen this work, you have to, because it's an inspiration to all of us. Our goal at Bauhaus Earth is to transform the built environment. So we were founded by a climate physicist named John Schellenhuber, who's worked really hard to model how atmospheric disturbance has grown over the last 30 years and understand its physical characteristics. But he realized several years ago that outside of his realm of inquiry, that there was this elephant in the climate room, which was the building sector, which putatively is responsible for 40% of greenhouse gas emissions, but in fact a host of other impacts to landscapes, to biodiversity, to water quality, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to transform the building environment to be something that's more metabolic in its relationship to whatever systems exist outside of the human activity. We're we're in the startup phase, and we're looking for partners, and particularly we're really impressed by the incredible work going on in Europe, but we realize that the bulk of population growth will happen outside of Europe and North America, and we're focusing on communities that are underrepresented and disenfranchised through global capitalism, and to try to find ways in which these incredible knowledge sources can be applied to the problem that we're trying to address, and to learn from those rather than impose our own vision on it. So we're developing a series of partner labs to try to help address this system through our network.
And that's exciting for so many reasons, but where from the tropical forest side, that's where a lot of the most valuable, ecologically valuable forests are, is in some of these areas where that development will be taking place. So there's an incredible both threat and opportunity there to make those connections so that the development that needs to happen there can happen in a way that's not going to destroy more of those forests.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's and Matt, what you're doing in a way is a partner forest project. You're getting timber from regional sources and making that part of the story of the buildings that you're actually making.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating, that journey of sort of understanding better the work that you're doing with that, and how that how it clearly resonates with the work that we've been doing, which is in the first instance had a focus on how can we add value to the homegrown Scottish resource, which has there's been many perception barriers to that being more deliberately used within construction, and we've sought over the last 12 months very specifically, and the longer term in terms of the relationship and collaborative work that we've done with Construction Scotland Innovation Centre here, and with Edinburgh Napier University specifically, who've done a lot of the background research that has helped inform how we can use the homegrown timber resource. And hopefully what's demonstrated here today demystifies the
beautifully demonstrated.
Beautifully demonstrated. Yeah, that's an important piece of the equation.
Yeah, thank you. But that makes the case that the use of the homegrown resource is totally viable, totally appropriate, and we can look at commercial scale of that, which is great. But that agenda is very aligned with the agenda of what you're both speaking about, and it's how do aspects of that export to be able to support the mission that you're both describing, and how can we, within the work that we deliver, reflect the partner forests work, and how can we look in doing that to be very deliberate. We talked earlier about how we're not just substituting one bit of our building with an imported bit of timber from yourselves, but looking at what are the characteristics of that we can bring forwards, and by celebrating those characteristics make that more viable. But I think I think that the knowledge transfer that needs to happen if we're going to really accelerate forwards and tackle the massive challenge and opportunity, as you note, that spirited collaboration, knowledge transfer is fundamental to that, and this discussion today is hugely exciting part of that. So
yeah, and I think what's really important about that point, Matt, is that we have this idea of the sort of linear flow of knowledge that somehow these academic institutions hermetically work out the solutions, pass it on to industry. Industry tests it a little bit, then puts it into the marketplace, and then human beings receive that. And I think the principle that we're operating all under is that there's a constant contangled flow of knowledge that comes out of experimentation, that comes out of really a high-level analysis of how the systems relate to one another, which we now have the capacity to really study, but also learning from people about the particular social, economic, climate stresses that they're experiencing, resources that are available that they know better than we do and understand how they work, and we can learn from them, so that we don't, I think at Bauhaus Earth, our goal is not to replicate the kind of very linear knowledge stream, very linear supply chains, but really kind of try to work within them and understand when pressures start to build, that you shift so that you're never damaging the place beyond where you're building. And I think that's a really important piece. I'm glad you brought that up, because knowledge exchange and that knowledge pathway idea is a really important part of this solution, if there is one here.
Which is potentially a little different than the very original Bauhaus, which tended to be a little bit more centralized, perhaps, and
with terms like masters and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. Although I think it was alive with experimentation.
It was,
but it also replicated a kind of 19th century educational system, in the sense that there was a hierarchy, and I think that we can't have a flat operational hierarchy, but we can certainly have a flat and level exchange of information without overvaluing academics or...
You're describing it much more of a two-way, a multi-directional flow of knowledge and learning.
And I think that's what we're all finding in our work at different scales and at different levels of detail.
Definitely, and I think certainly what's manifest here is I think is unlocked by bringing forward the strengths of each. So we're working with the academic institution institutions in doing this with the innovation center, and then ourselves as a commercial accelerator. It's like how do we accelerate those ideas, those concepts through and get them actually on the ground, because it's only that's where we get to do the rapid iterations, and having that applied innovation, I think is going to be key. We haven't got time to let it go through a more linear cycle. We need points of convergence. We need points where it comes together. It's not right, but hey, but it's gone quick, and actually we understand what the next iteration of that looks like.
And I think if you actually applied that same judgment that you just described to your own work on business as usual construction, you would find that that's not a solution.
No.
It's failing us in terms of cost, efficiency, resource requirements. And I think this idea that we can change the criteria by which we make design decisions culturally, but also professionally in our disciplines, to sort of reach way beyond the typical bounded system of the building object and the technology that's applied to it, but to think really about its kind of prior life, its role in some kind of ecosystem, and then finally its reuse for over and over again, so they don't have to constantly draw on virgin resources. And so this sort of expansion of our conception of design, that we actually design the whole system.
And that's a real opportunity for education. And Alan is an educator, and Matt, I don't know if you teach at all. I've done some teaching, and I'm very interested in how we're also transforming the educational system for architecture, for example, which has typically focused quite heavily on the building as an object or even an urban fabric. But we've got to think beyond urban fabric even to the whole environment from which the materials
and
come.
even sustainability has been taught as a series of technologies that are applied like products to building, rather than really understanding why it's important that we not emit X toxin, but just that we assemble these technologies. And sustainability, which is now even an outdated term in some senses, because we've gone too far to want to sustain what we have to actually reverse climate change and restore the climate. I think that we have to essentially understand that there's a natural and social science basis to the work that we do, and understand that to some degree without fetishizing science and rationality, but to really understand that that sustainability is an understanding of the system rather than another product to buy.
Yeah.
And that's what's so amazing about your work, Matt, because when I look at this, I think everything has been studied at a really systemic level, and then introduced into the building envelope. And yes, the objects that you're making are beautiful and the spaces are beautiful, but also you understand that every surface, every fastener has been thought about as part of an ecosystem rather than as a product supply chain.
Yeah, and I don't do formal teaching, but what we do is engage very positively with the student base. So we're supporters of Design Engineer Construct, who are going to be here next week in the Gen Zero classroom with school kids. Now they have a built environment curriculum course which is multidisciplinary, which engages kids at that school age, in what a future in the built environment could look like, and that's hugely valuable. We need that, and then we collaborate positively with Edinburgh Napier University. We've kind of created a built environment exchange program, which is about getting current students into getting them direct industry experience, some international experience, some entrepreneurial experience as well. And it's definitely the biggest privilege of what we do is actually bringing forward students, graduates, getting them involved. Our entire design team has typically been made up of students and recent graduates, and the energy that they can bring to this is immense. And hopefully the strengthening of it gives them a real springboard in their careers, and the earlier they can get out there and really sort of be the pioneers, be the hold the existing industry to account and be confident in doing so, that almost has the prospect of having as much impact as anything
Oh
we
my
can
goodness!
do
So
on the shop floor.
buildings,
that's education.
buildings as
Yeah,
teachers,
yeah.
the system being involved in it. I mean, this is really where education is going anyway, and which is breaking down those boundaries between formal and experiential education.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I look at my 4.5-year-old, how he's learning, I just think, keep that going. He hasn't entered the
Don't
formal
stop.
system yet.
Yes, that's right.
And it's like, let's keep him
Education as
in
product
the
instead
woods.
of
And,
Yeah.
what you're doing is amazing, and it is an education for all of us. So thank you, Matt. And
Thank you so much.
and, you're doing a great job here.
Good
Let's
to see
do
you.
that.
Good to
Yeah.
see you.
Okay.